I'm Mike Hall, the Executive Director of the Three Rangers Foundation, and through our mission and programs, we support the Ranger Regiment's Ranger for Life program by providing experience, guidance, and vetted resources for current and veteran Rangers and their families. We support the Ranger for Life program by providing benchmark transition assistance. We understand that transition is a lifelong event that starts at enlistment. We maintain transition counselors at each of the Ranger battalions, offering timely and personalized support in the regiment's transition Big Five, which is mentorship and networking, education, financial wellness, VA benefits, and holistic fitness and wellness to active duty as well as Ranger veterans. Central to our approach is our extensive mentorship program, leveraging a network of about 10,000 formal and informal former members of the Ranger Regiment who provide unvarnished experience and access to their networks and knowledge. They know what success looks like. These meaningful relationships allow mentors and mentees to stay connected to the Ranger community and benefit from shared experiences and guidance. Today, we're going to hear from an old friend of mine, some mentor advice from Ranger Network mentor Will Reinhard on the new federal rule on two-page resumes. Will, it's always good to catch up with you and see you in this case. Why don't you start off before we get into the brief? Why don't you tell us a little about your Ranger, your Army career, your Ranger time, and what you've done after that?
Sure. It's good to be here and help everybody out and give you some updates on what's going on in the federal government. I currently serve as a HR advisor for the Human Resources Agency in the Army. We hire, we do all the hiring for civilians that come work for the Army, but we are a federal agency, and so a lot of the same rules that we follow, the other agencies have to follow as well. I started out my career in the Army when in the 75th Ranger Regiment. Sergeant Major Hall was my first sergeant when I first got there to First Battalion, and I spent about 8 years in the First Ranger Battalion. I moved on into some other positions throughout the Army, different units, and then I eventually ended up in the somehow in the Army's legislative liaison, working with members of Congress and the Senate and their congressional delegations and doing all kinds of cool stuff with that. I'm going to go ahead and, I moved into working as a civilian for the Army after a little bit of civilian sector experience. And this is what I do now. Work in the world of HR for the federal government.
Well, thanks. I mean, I know you talked to a ton of Rangers. If I mean, Rangers do all kinds of different things. There's no really large category, but if there was a larger category, it's guys who want to work for the federal government, usually in federal law enforcement, and you're the go-to guy to that to help guys get started in that process. Because if you can't get past the hiring process, which is the same for just about every agency, I believe, you're not going to be talking to any hiring manager to get a job anywhere. So why don't we, I appreciate you putting together this presentation, and why don't you tell us what guys need to know about the federal hiring process and specifically resumes?
Sure. And I can tell you that, I know being a fellow infantryman that, there is a lot of interest in doing security and different types of protective services and things like that initially. But I just want to let you all know that your skills can transfer into other fields if that doesn't end up being something you want to do. And happy to talk to you about that on a one-on-one basis. And so I'm going to go ahead and start the little presentation here. Recently, we've had some changes with the new administration as far as what we're looking at as far as hiring within the federal government and trying to make that process a little bit quicker and smoother for just so we can get people on board quicker. Essentially, is what it boils down to. And so, what we used to experience was a catch-all kind of resume that we used in the federal government, where you could have a 5 to 10 page resume and an HR specialist, once you submit that through the job announcement, the HR specialist will have to go through and read all those resumes. And so if they have, 100 applicants to a particular job. They have to burn through all those resumes, try and find that specialized experience that we're looking for within that resume. And so the federal government has, through this administration, brought that down to a two-page resume rule. And and so that opens up some questions and it brings it back more in line with the civilian sector as far as how they do resumes. And the deadline to have that done, they're going to start opening the use of that up is going to be September 27th, 2025. And so if you're out there currently applying for positions, just be aware of that. And you also want to understand that they're not going to accept resumes that are longer than that as well. And so that's something you got to make sure that you're checking that. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. And then they also included, they're adding 4 short free response essay questions to all GS5 and below positions that you're going to be applying for. And I'm just going to show you that and talk to you about that. And I'm also going to give you some tips on how to get all this done and give you an idea of what we're looking for as far as HR, because we are the roadblock to get your resume to the hiring manager. And so if you get it past us, it'll get to the hiring manager and you'll probably get an interview. So let me go ahead and proceed. And so when we're looking at a resume, specialized experience is the key that what HR specialists are looking for. HR managers, or not HR managers, hiring managers and HR get together before we recruit for a job, and we say, what kind of experience does an applicant need to have in order to be successful at this job? And so we write some statements, and you'll see them in those job announcements. And I'm just going to show you real quick what that looks like in the job announcement and where you can find that, because these need to be in your resume. Okay. As you scroll down USA Jobs, you're looking at a job, you'll come down here to requirements, and you'll see something that says specialized experience right here. Okay. It then lists those requirements. And then here in this particular one, they all look a little bit differently, but it will always say specialized experience. This is what we're looking for in your resume, these statements right here that I'm highlighting, okay? And so when you're crafting your resume, and especially now considering that we have a reduced amount of page space you can use, really want to emphasize looking at the specialized experience and crafting your duty statements, your experience statements after these. You're not going to want to copy and paste them, but you're going to want to look at the wording and what they're looking for and craft your statements based on these. And it has to have each one of these in there. You can't just have a couple and expect to get past HR. You need to have it all, okay? Because that's how they screen out resumes. If it's missing one of these bullets or one of these statements, they can't match something in your resume to one of these statements, they're going to pass on your resume. Okay. Another example here, program manager. If you're doing something outside of security or, being a secret agent or anything like that, you'll see statements like here. This is again specialized experience. This one is grade dependent as well. But here again, you have these statements, and these are the statements that you're going to be wanting to make sure that you're mirroring them in your resume. Okay. And I'll go back to the slideshow here. And so, we take a look at the specialized experience has to be clear in your resume. And you want to make sure that you're using bullets that match those specialized experience definitions. And then under the bullets there, you can see that you want to still try to use those statements, and you want to personalize them using data that you've accomplished. As you can see here, you reduced incidents by 20%. You organized and prioritized, you know, 10 plus competing assignments under emergency conditions. You still want to personalize those statements, make them yours, but you want to make them in related to those specialized experience statements you see in the job announcements. Okay. And so continue on with that. So how do I condense my 10-page federal resume into 2 pages. And so to get down to those 2 pages, you're gonna need to focus only on what matters, and what matters is what you see in that job announcement, okay? So prioritize those duties and achievements that tie directly to that specialized experience. If you're, maybe you retired from the military, you've got over 20 years of experience, maybe you've got 30 years experience that might apply to that specialized experience. Okay. And so your job experience that is related to that job might be lower down on that resume. And so what you need to do is to conserve space, condense all that other stuff you've done that doesn't apply to that particular job you're applying for, scrunch it down, maybe just have the job title there, maybe just one sentence explaining what you did so that relative experience can be um, put on that 2-page limit. You can get rid of that within that kind of thing. You can get rid of that salary information, your supervisor's names, all that stuff that's not in jobs that really matter to the job you're applying for. Condense it, get rid of it, get the jobs on there so HR can see that you have the experience they're looking for, okay? And use those strong quantifiable bullets, and for the jobs or for that experience that you, want them to see, okay? Moving on here. So what to include, you wanna make sure that, and you'll see this when, USA Jobs has a resume builder, okay? All this information will be captured there, but if you build your own on a Word document, you can just make sure you have this stuff on there. Um, then again, this is all for the jobs that relate to that specialized experience. And so, you want to have your contact information for your previous supervisor, your job history, make sure you got those specialized experience focused bullets, any education and licenses that are for the job you're applying to, okay? Optional if relevant. So things like airborne school graduation date, your PT test, things like that, if it doesn't relate to the job you're applying for, doesn't need to be on there. If the job does not require a clearance, you don't need to put it on there. Again, this is all about saving space to get your resume within the length that OPM is accepting now, okay? And so, again, you don't want to put personal informations like your social security number, things like that, photos, classified information, no personal details like family information, how many children you have. Keep all that stuff off there. That's not really appropriate for a resume or for an interview. So just keep that in mind. And let's see, moving on. Tips and tricks beyond the resume. So now that you have a reduced space, typically HR never, I'll just say that HR will never look at your cover letter that you put in there. That cover letter is going to be sent with your resume to the hiring manager. So in the hiring manager, you can expand on the information that you might have left out now because you have a limited space. So maybe use that cover letter to catch their eye. Do put some of the cool stuff you've done in there on that cover letter since you couldn't put it in the resume now, okay? Um, and in there, you can highlight your leadership, your awards, your achievements, things like that that didn't get captured in that resume, okay? The 4 essay questions, I got another slide that I'm gonna, cover on that, but that gives you another chance to supplement your resume information within those bullets, okay? And I'm gonna show you those bullets, and you'll see how you can actually, expand on the context of what you did from your resume within those bullets or within those essay questions. Okay. Um, and those, again, I'm going to show you what those questions actually say here in a second. When you do the interview, make sure you're using the STAR method. And again, the interview is another chance for you to expand on what you've shared in your resume, talk about the cool things you've done, and how it relates to what they're looking for in that particular organization. And then another tip here is make sure you're keeping your different versions of your resume, um, just so you can generate new ones for these jobs because you have such a limited amount of space now. You can't do that one size fits all resume where you're just using the same resume and click and submit for every single job you're applying for. You're going to have to do more tailoring now based on what they're looking for in that particular job in USA or in USA jobs. All right. And I just want to show you some things real quick here that I pulled up. This is the merit hiring plan. This is where all this is coming from. You can find this on OPM's website. I did include the links in this slideshow that I can share with you all. So you can take a look at that and see how this developed. And then USA Jobs does have a help center for this new process on how to update your resume to 2 pages. Again, they're not going to accept anything more than 2 pages. Okay. OPM also has a page on conducting interviews, structured interviews, got a lot of different tips and everything to take a look at when you have some time. Practice, practice, practice. And they also have a slideshow for those hiring managers on how to conduct interviews. The more you know about your enemy, the better, right? So use this as intel to understand where they're coming from and why they're asking these questions in order to get a leg up on your competition. Um, Here it is. So the executive orders, again, I'm going to show you um, those 4 questions. One of the questions is related directly to executive orders. And so you'll have to go onto this web page and find those, right? And so when you're getting ready to submit your resume, you want to make sure you download it and check it out for real, what it's going to look like when you send it, to make sure that it's under those 2 pages. Okay. Um, if you're using the resume builder that's in OPM, download it. Make sure it's under that 2 pages. Make sure that it's searchable by recruiters that are out there. Okay. And, you know, those are just some tips to make sure that your resume is good to go. You want to, print it out, take a look at it, make sure that when it hits HR's desk, it's at that 2 page max. Okay. So the key takeaways for your resume: 2 pages max starting in September 27th. Make sure you're highlighting that specialized experience that is listed in that job announcement. Use your cover letters, your essays, and interviews to supplement any of that information that you think they need to know. Keep a master resume, but tailor each application before you submit it. And then make sure you get that stuff updated early to avoid any disqualifications because the deadline is approaching. And then told you I would talk about these essay questions. And so OPM's adding this functionality to USA staffing, and federal agencies are developing the guidance they're going to use as far as how they're going to implement this once that's available in USA staffing. Um, these questions are going to be for any position you apply to that is above the GS4 or higher. So I'm sorry, if it's a GS5 and higher, you'll see these questions on your job announcement. And so you can see here how you can use some of these questions from your personal experience to tell more about yourself to the hiring manager. And these things could be from items you left out of your resume because of this new 2 page limit. And so I just want to draw your attention um, to number 3 here, where you have to identify 1 or 2 relevant executive orders or policy initiatives that are significant to you and explain how you would implement them if hired. Okay. So this is going to involve a little bit of homework. You're going to have to go out to the executive orders for this administration. Don't use the last administration's executive orders. And make sure you're tying together some things that you've done in the past, some things you might do once you get this position in order to kind of advance these executive orders in your responses. Okay. Now, these are free form. They will say that they are voluntary or optional, but as my advice to you is make sure you're filling something in here. Okay. Don't leave this blank. It's my opinion that HR might use, if you don't fill these out, HR might not send your resume and your application forward. And um, and these are things that you can keep as canned responses. Put them on a Word document somewhere. You can answer. They're not going to change these questions, as far as I'm aware right now. So these will be the same questions you respond to on every application. So you can have a canned response that you just copy and paste into that section. Okay. And so those are the two changes that are coming up that are pretty significant that you need to know about as you're getting ready to apply to positions here in the near future. Here is some links that of all the stuff I showed you that you can take some time and review and just get your stuff ready and rehearse those interviews. And that concludes my information. I don't know if you had any follow-up questions or anything like that, Sergeant Major.
Yeah, well, thanks. Very, very informative. I didn't realize the significance of the change, quite frankly, until I saw your brief. Just one thing, if you would, if you can forward me that the actual presentation, also, we'd like to have that, be able to post it. The things that came out to me, there's a significant change, but one thing hasn't changed. Some people think that, okay, I've been in the Army and I want to become an 1811 and I was an airborne ranger and of course they're going to hire me because they're going to see I was an airborne ranger. And that's not true. That's not true at all. I mean, you still have to do a lot of preparation. If you don't go into the federal website and look at all the resources that are available, then you may not be successful because not everybody understands the significance of what you did in the military. And if you can't get past HR to get to a hiring manager, then those skills aren't going to be anything. So do your preparation. I think you know the way the resumes are being done now makes the talking to mentors so much more important because you can only use 2 pages. And if you want to get into the Secret Service or HSI or the FBI or whatever, talking to guys that are already hired and asking them for their resumes and maybe using, some common bullets, to make your resume more powerful, I think is going to be key because obviously they got hired, so that must be what the agency is probably looking for. So and especially since it's cut down now. So talk to your mentors out there, ask for their resumes. There's a standard guideline, but of course each agency also has their own sets of questions, and understanding the kinds of questions they're going to ask for you is going to make you successful during the interview process. But there's not just 1811 jobs out there. Well, yeah, I think you mentioned that you want to talk about some other opportunities in the federal government.
No, sure. So right now we are still on a hiring freeze, but we do have exceptions to that, and it's typically the exceptions that we get are for security related positions, any very anything defense related. The border patrol right now they're really looking for people, and I do want to add, kind of bouncing off of Sergeant Major's comments there. When somebody's looking at your HR person's looking at your resume, most of them are not veterans. All right. And so you want to
Okay.
make sure you're putting it in real world language. Okay. And get rid of those acronyms and those kind of things. Right. They don't understand that stuff. And so, when I'm looking at a program manager position and you those are out there, that's something that you've done. That's what you do. You manage things, programs, you get tasks done, you do things like that, you manage folk. Program manager is something that somebody coming out of the military can tackle, right? Being a If you want to do contracting all day long, managing those contracts, doing things like that, those are things that you can do coming right out of the military. They don't require education. um, Education, if you got the benefits, use it. Um, if you're earning a degree, we do have a fellowship program where you can come in right out of the military. If you want to do something different, um, we can put you into that program. And to be honest with you, that's how I got hired. Right, I started using my benefits. I got into I took a business degree and I turned that into an HR job because they have a fellowship program. So there's all kinds of opportunities out there. happy to talk to anybody about that, and show you what's out there, some other time. And yeah, that's all I had to add to that, Sergeant Major.
Yeah. Well, again, thanks. Well, thanks for all you do. Giving back. You're obviously a busy man. You got friends and family obligations, and to still take all the time that you do to talk to transitioning and veterans rangers to help them be successful in the federal government is really something very, very special. So, again, thanks for your time today and your continual giving back. And Rangers lead the way.
All the way. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.